Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Francis Richard.
Innovative Thinkers, episode number 189, Innovative Thinker. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by elevating CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Francis Richard, former professional basketball player, former president and director of a nonprofit based in Nigeria, and now campus pastor. Welcome, Greg Hendricks.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to be here with Dr. Francis. I'm so excited, and I pray that this will be a great time for all of you just to kind of lean in and we all grow together.
You have such an extensive bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your role as a campus pastor?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up not knowing my father. I don't know my father till this day. Single mother home, one sister, very small family. I was conceived in a one night stand. I have, a lot of things were stacked against me growing up as a young male. However, there was grace on my life, and I didn't even know what that word meant until later on in my life. But now I'm a father of 3 children, 2 boys, a little girl. My oldest son is going to be going to college this year in the fall at San Diego State. And I've been married to my wife, been with my wife for over 21 years. We've been married since 2011, which is about 9 years, going on 9 years this year in September. And, now fast forward, I'm a pastor. I play professional basketball overseas for about 8 years. I got a chance to be a volunteer assistant coach with the Seattle Supersonics back in 2004, 2005. So I got some NBA experience there as well to be able to coach and be a part of an organization at that level. And now fast forward, currently, I am a campus pastor for the Rock Church in San Diego, which is the largest church in San Diego. Senior pastor is Miles McPherson, who started the church in the year 2000. And I am a campus pastor, and essentially we have 5 campuses. The East County campus, physical people, is probably the second biggest campus. The first one is obviously where Pastor Miles McPherson preaches out of, which is the main campus. But the second biggest one physically for people is located in the East. And I've been elevated to become the senior leader of that campus, which is about 2,600 people. And obviously everyone is in their homes now as we all are worshiping from our homes. But, by the grace of God, he saw me fit to be the leader of that campus. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been a real humbling experience, especially, because that's not something I desired to do out the gate. I was going to be a professional coach. That was going to be what I was going to be doing after my playing days, because you can't play forever. But God had a plan for my life. He still has a plan for my life. He has a plan for everyone that's listening and tuning in on this for your life, whether you believe or don't believe. I really believe that this season that we're in is, the most revealing season in our history of mankind. In our lifetime, at least. And, we have an opportunity to go one way or the other. And you have all these things that are brewing and stirring, from inequality to race, to COVID-19, to having to do stuff in our homes now. And everything is being rewritten. And so we're at a Kairos moment where we can either, receive it and become negative, or we can receive it and receive it in strength and receive it in unity and build together for the next generation to inherit something really beautiful.
Talk about COVID-19 and the inequality, the injustice, and everything that's going on. Talk specifically to our audience about what advice would you give them?
Yeah, in regards to COVID-19, this is something that we are all, journeying through together. And obviously, no one has an answer on how to deal with this. I think what you're seeing with this pandemic is that it's revealing, unfortunately, a lot of things in our lifetime that can be strengthened, and not necessarily just broken, but that can be strengthened, that there's opportunity there to be strengthened. Unfortunately, we grieve with family members that have been lost, people that have been impacted, people that have been sick, but it's really forced us as a society to reflect and think about what is of high significance, what is of high importance, and that pandemic can do a couple things. It could divide us or it could unify us, and it really stems on how we receive all the information, how we grow. I think a lot of people, obviously, and rightfully so, are scared. They don't understand, the things about it. So it's very important for us to get educated, to get strengthened, to really reach out to your family members, tell them you love them. If you have any issues with people, that tell them you forgive them. I mean, there's no reason why you should be carrying not only the emotional stress of being involved in a pandemic, but the physical pressure to be like, oh man, I can get sick, or this can happen, or my family member can get sick. You don't want to be carrying both, because you'll be living in a prison of fear. You'll be living in a prison of on edge for the rest of your living days, or at least until they find a vaccine. But COVID-19 has forced us to really evaluate some things in our home. And, and this may sound insensitive, but hear my heart. It's not to sound this way. I'm actually kind of, I wouldn't say happy, but it's almost kind of like, dude, is this really a blessing that this happened? It forced us to stay in our homes, because now we have to focus on our families. Now we have to focus on our marriages. Now we have to focus on our children. Now we have to focus on our own hearts and grow individually. And being at home, in your homes, and you have the time to really work from home or do something from home, has allowed you to do that. Now, in regards to race relations, it is a tragedy that Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and, tons of names that happened prior to that, all this stuff has happened. And you see injustice happening right before our very eyes. And you mix that on top of COVID-19, on top of all this stuff, you're seeing that there's a frustration amongst people in general. And the injustice for race, it was almost kind of like a match to the fire, and it just exploded. And unfortunately, we had to lose lives over that. But the beauty is, out of ashes comes beauty. And we have an opportunity to really come together and unite, and you're seeing some progress. You're seeing certain things that reflect racism, root racism in our country are being corrected. People are coming together, different voices, different backgrounds are coming together to try to correct some things that have been wrong for many, many years. But what the number one thing I think people have to take away from that is that it's not just one voice doing all the work. It's a collaborative effort. We need people to come together. We need people to talk to one another and understand the pain, to lament, to cry with one another, to sympathize with one another, to not only have empathy with one another, be like, okay, how can we build together in unity? And that it can't just be one boy. It can't be just the African American community. It can't be just the white community. It can't just be the Asian community. It needs to be all communities, all humanity coming together to strengthen one another. And what you're seeing right now is actually that happening before our very eyes. But what we have to be very cautious of is that we're doing it en route in unity and with the strength that it's on built on a good foundation. Because at the end of the day, Dr. Francis, at the end of the day, the most important thing is not only do we correct the wrongs, but probably more importantly, that the next generation will inherit something for them to build on and continually make better. And that we would make that our ceiling would be their starting point, and that they would make it better and take it to the next level.
Pastor Greg, you talked about COVID-19 is causing us to be sheltered in and be able to deal with ourselves. And we know that pressure bust, a pipe will bust under pressure.
Yeah.
We're seeing a rise in domestic violence and abuse to children.
Yeah.
And we were talking about having those engaging conversations. How are you having those engaging conversations when it's already a lot of pressure, a lot of tension, and in the home?
Right. Well, I would just speak even in my own home. The best way for you to have conversation is to be admittingly what you don't know. What are your fears? What are your doubts? What's your lens on this? And to engage your children, if you have children, to engage your children. Or if you don't have children and you don't have like a big family, and maybe you're a single person and you're living in your own home, pick up the phone and maybe call someone and say, hey, what's your lens on this? How do you feel about this? And don't ask with a agenda to give an answer, but just hear that person out. I think that's the best way to start a conversation, is to ask and be a deep listener and really open up your ear, open up your heart to hear someone else's perspective without being offended or without pushing your agenda or where you stand on something unless they ask you. But just be a deep listener, because the beauty of it is that when you start to inherit other people's lenses and see how they're seeing, with you being anchored on truth and where you're at, it allows you to have a greater perspective on how to bring help and strength to fix the issue or to talk to that person. And that's how I've been having conversation. I'll even ask my own kids, like, hey, what do you know about this? What do you feel about this right now? How does this make you think about the future? Just probing questions, and allow them just to share. And it may not be a real profound answer. It may be something simple, but sometimes the real profound revelation can come out of a simple answer, and whether it's from a child or whether it's from your friend. And so I think the main thing in having these conversations is that you want to be able to grow and pull away perspective, and not allow it to write the narrative of your heart in the midst of the situation. That you don't want to allow it to do that. You still want to be anchored in truth and what truth is, but still be able to broaden your ear and broaden your heart to hear other people's opinion en route to being educated on the pulse and of the time of what people around you are feeling.
There's a lot of pain. And Pastor Greg, we're talking about in the church, and I'm seeing and hearing a lot of pain and people not knowing how to deal with everything that's going on. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would say in regards to pain, you have to be able to speak about that pain and be able to express that pain and not suppress that pain. Because when you suppress pain, it ends up coming out at another time, in another vehicle, or in another way. And sometimes that is very unhealthy, not only for you emotionally, but for you physically, when you suppress something down. And what can end up happening is when you suppress pain down, and you could be in a very simple conversation, and it's not, explosive or anything of that nature, but a trigger word can set you off. And then next thing you know, you blow up and you're like, man, where did that come from? Or the person that you're talking to or people you're engaging with, like, wow, he just blew up on me. I don't even know what that's about. But that could be something that was that happened a year ago or 1 month ago. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to suppress. Now, what I think the best thing you can do to deal with pain is be open and express like, hey, here's where I'm at. I know in our church, our senior pastor carries a message called The Third Option, and about how to identify and celebrate the commonalities we have with one another as opposed to the differences, and just that whole journey on what that looks like. And when you celebrate the commonalities between one another, for example, just a small example, like if me and you were talking and we both have children, like that's a commonality that we can share regardless of age. It's like, oh, I've had children. Oh, I had children. Oh, okay. So what are some of the things that you went through with your children? And then you share, and then I share. And then what you find that there is some similarity there, despite maybe our skin color, but there's similarities. So to celebrate the things that we have in common more than we have not have in common, I think that's a great way to discuss pain and get over the hurdle of you don't look like me, I don't look like you, you don't have my background, I don't have your background. But when you acknowledge the likeness of people, the similarities in the likeness of one another, it gives you a starting point and common ground to discuss pain and to discuss hard topics, to discuss things that, oh, you know what, I don't necessarily have a perspective on this, but you do. And again, going back to being a deep listener, when you inherit the characteristic and the trait of becoming a great listener, then it allows you to have those types of goes to the next level and have those types of conversation in that space. And whether you guys look like each other or whether you're going to have completely different backgrounds, but that you're willing to listen to one another, I feel like these are great starting points and kind of low hanging fruit for you to just, grow as a human being, and listen. And hey, what are some of the challenges you have from your perspective? Help me understand some of the challenges. And no question is an ignorant question, especially if you're coming from a place like I really don't know. Help me understand. And that takes really humbling yourself. Like, hey, I don't understand. Can you give me some insight on this? What does this look like? Another great thing, this is in regards to inequality or race, is identify like, hey, I may have blind spots, and that having blind spots doesn't make you a racist person. And side note, no one's born racist. You have to be taught to think that way. You have to be taught to feel that way. No one is born that way. And so when you acknowledge like, hey, I have some blind spots, or maybe I've stereotyped certain scenarios or certain narratives or certain people. Maybe I've labeled someone and called this person this as opposed to calling him or her brother and sister. I'll give you an example. Sometimes I've been to gyms. I like to work out. I like staying fit. I like to, I feel like that's a non-negotiable in my life to stay fit. It helps with the emotional stress, helps with the physical stress. And, oftentimes I go to the gym, there's a lot of white people in there, but you'd be surprised. Never met any of these people. You would see the wall come down immediately when I would say, hey, what's up, brother? I'll say that to a white person, and how validated they feel, like, oh, they don't look at me as obviously a brother with like my skin tone is the same as their skin tone, but they acknowledge me as that we're peers. We're seeing eye to eye. I'll say, hey, brother, how you doing? Or, hey, sister, how you doing? It may be a white person, it may be an Asian person, it may be a Mexican person, it may be whoever it may be, that you are acknowledging the humanity in that person. And the wall immediately comes down. And it's the same in conversation when you're discussing pain, is when you discuss from that lens and you see that person as peer to peer, eye to eye, and you humbly submit yourself to the conversation to be a deep listener, then you will grow in your leadership. You will grow as a human being. And I always say the greatest leaders are the deepest listeners. If you're a deep listener, you will go to the next level of leadership. You will go to the next level of humanity in your life, because you are anchored in saying to that person, hey, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about your story. And it's essentially what God was to Jesus was to us. It said, if you want to become greater, you become less. And that doesn't mean that you belittle yourself. It means that you humble yourself and become a great listener.
Pastor Greg, talking about leadership, how did you go from being a professional basketball player, first of all, and you mentioned you were unchurched, to you're accepting this call of God, and now a leader in one of the largest church, a campus pastor? How do you go to that elevation?
Wow. Doctor, I would tell you right now, I don't know. No. I could give you some tips. Obviously, it's the grace of God. But I think for me, my journey, especially, you have to understand something. Like I stated in the beginning, for all the listeners that may just be tuning in or may just be catching this later, I didn't grow up with a father in my home. And so that model was not there for me. I didn't have a male in my life that was giving me great principles, good core values on how to grow as a man, how to treat a woman, how to court a woman when you liked her, and how to express that you like her or that you would want to date her. I didn't have any of these models. I was conceived in a one night stand, and that's not a slam against my mom. I love my mother and I value her deeply. And I'm so thankful for all the sacrifices that she did for me. But I also fell on my face quite a bit. And there were some hard lessons that I had to learn by things that I chose to do, not that God had in store for me, but that I chose to do in my own personal, I need to do it my way. And in the midst of all of that, you learn some hard lessons. But growing up, I always felt that you can always have better for your life. And I didn't know what quote unquote better was, but I knew that there was something that was greater for me. Like I didn't have to settle for what I had, that I could strive for greater, that I can go for greater. And, statistically on paper, they say, I think it's like 75% of young males grow up without their fathers in the home. And that impacts a lot. It impacts how you think. It impacts how you're loved. It impacts your identity. It impacts you being championed as a young person. It impacts your you being validated as a young person. There's a lot that's at stake there. And so I look at someone like myself, not coming from the church, just like I described that background. So statistically, I probably should not be where I am, but by the grace of God and by, like I was saying earlier, being submitted and being humble to really learn. And like, okay, I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to learn. And one of the things that I did when I was younger, and I didn't know why I did it, but now I do. One of the things I did when I was younger, when there would be certain male figures that would come around, whether my mom brought them around or whether it was friends, whatever male figure that was as a young man, I would take the best attribute of that person. And so, for example, if he comes around and he's humorous, I would take his humor. If this person was kind, I would take his kindness. If this person was generous, I would take his generosity. If this person was loving, I would take this person. And I would take the best attribute and I would compile in my heart and in my mind that that's what my dad is. That's who my dad is. That person's kind. That person's loving. That person is patient. That person is funny. And I would say to myself, that's the dad I'm going to be one day, and that I just gave myself hope. And what I was doing was not only a defense mechanism, but what it was I was describing my heavenly father to a T. Like I was taking the best attributes and I was compiling who he was to me in my heart, which brought me initially to my faith. And so in that, I was like, oh, okay, I started to grow by inheriting a core value of seeing the good, even in something bad, and just inheriting that. And it allowed me to step into a different level of leadership, a different level where I get a chance to speak to people, because no matter how bad that person may be, I'm still able to see some type of good in them, because at the end of the day, according to what God's word says, we're all designed in the image of God. So if we're all designed in the image of God, there has to be some type of good in that person. Somewhere along their journey, they've been neglected, they've been denied, they may have been abused, something may have happened in their life, but there is some good in a person, but they may have lost it along the way. Now, granted, there's evil in this world. We know that. We deal with evil. There are evil people in this world. So I'm not being completely neglective of that. But what I'm saying is, for me as a leader, going back to your question, as a leader growing in that, this core value has helped me to grow as a leader and becoming a leader in, this church, and bringing me from my background to this point. And now I get an opportunity to speak into people, professionals, everybody from the faceless to the famous, and everybody in between. I speak into those people's lives, and it's been an honor and a privilege. But a lot of it, honestly, I don't think it's something that you can just necessarily read in the book. A lot of it is falling on your face, humbling yourself, picking yourself up, inheriting core values, core principles that you can give to the next generation and to young people, to say, hey, this is how you want to build your life. But don't be afraid to feel like, oh, I have to have it all together. No, you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have any ability, but availability. Just make yourself available to be humble and learn. I think that's the best way to step into a next level of leadership.
Talk about your top 2 influencers and what lessons did they teach you?
Oh, good question. Obviously, I'm a Christian and a pastor, so the Lord is going to be obviously number one. But let's just say, apart from the Lord, my top influencers, there's been so many, and I don't think I necessarily have a top 2. From apologists, Ravi Zacharias, the late great Ravi Zacharias, who passed away this year, impacted me quite a bit. Different pastors, different business leaders who aren't people of faith I've able to lean in to their lives and glean from. I think some different people that work in governmental positions, they've influenced me, they've impacted me. I think my top 2 influencers are people who carry a spirit of unity and a spirit of, okay, I want to build and make something greater for the next generation. I always glean from those people, because I know to the core of them, it's not about them. It's about, okay, how do I empower the next up? And so I don't think I necessarily have a 2, because again, going back to my childhood, I was, survival mode. So my whole thing was to survive. So I would, again, take the best out of all these different people. And again, what I did was develop a core value, which would allow me to grow. But I never had, but, obviously growing up in sports, if you could talk in sports, Michael Jordan, just like every other aspiring basketball player, Michael Jordan had an impact on me just because of his sheer work ethic and his passion to really groom his craft. If you're talking in faith, Pastor Miles McPherson, his faithfulness unto God, Ravi Zacharias, his faithfulness unto the word, Bill Johnson, all the way out there in Bethel, their whole camp, they're just their heart for God and how they go after God. Robert Morris down in Gateway in Texas, his love for generosity, and so on and so forth. Bishop T.D. Jakes, his passion, his preaching ability, that's just in the faith sector. In the business sector, I mean, there's so many different people in the business sector. Like, wow, man, I love the fact that they're passionate about their business. So there's been different people that have impacted me over the course of the years. But I would say, lastly, in regards to that question, all those people that have impacted me, it's funny because if you were to ask me, doctor, what I'm doing, if you were to ask me a year ago or 2 years ago, I'd probably laugh at you. Like, there's no way I would do that. There's no way I would be involved with this person. There's no way I would be able to speak into this person. There's no way I would run a nonprofit out of Nigeria, Africa, helping young kids come to America and get Christian educations and allowing them to go to college with the hopes that they would go back to their country and rebuild. There's no way I would do anything like that. I would disqualify myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not smart enough. Oh, I don't understand. I want to do it. And it was like God was saying, okay, perfect. You're qualified. Hop right in and get it done. And I honestly surprise myself sometimes, like, man, I can't believe that just happened. Or I got an opportunity to do that. Or that person would really trust me to speak into their lives. And again, it goes all the way back to what your original question was about the people along my journey thus far that have impacted me, because I've learned so much, even if it's just something really small, like from Dr. Francis, how patient you are and how much of a deep listener you are. Just as in our conversation, I could see you listening and absorbing and then sharing with the public, the people that God has given you to steward. Like, oh, man, I can learn how she listens, And so every time I meet someone, no matter the color of their skin, no matter male, female, no matter their age, I'm always like, I can learn by simply listening and watching you, and that I don't want anything from you but to be a blessing to you. But then the blessing for me is that I can learn from your life. That's how I view it.
What do you hope for the next generation?
My hope for the next generation is that they would not allow someone else to write the narrative for their growth. They would not allow someone to dictate what they can do with their life, and that our current situation would be an opportunity for them to learn, to glean, to learn, to educate themselves, to becoming greater male and females in this society, that they would use the gifts that God has graced them with to really build something long term for the generation after them, that they would really inherit the core value that it's not about them. It's about us as humanity, for us to really grow together. I feel like if we can get that down, and again, going back to having good conversation, then we have a chance to really do something unique in our lifetime. I think back, biblically, there's a story in the Bible, the book of Nehemiah, and I just love that story because I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now. Here you have something that has been destroyed for many, many years, the walls, and they come to this man with this issue, and he views the issue, and the first thing that he does, doctor, is he laments, he cries, he identifies with the pain. Then he prays like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? He's not a construction worker. He's a cupbearer. And that it didn't impact him. It didn't affect him. Matter of fact, he's a cupbearer in the king's palace. So the problem does not affect him. But he does those two things to start. And then he gets a letter, and he goes and he starts rebuilding something. Those walls were broken for over 114 years. They tried 72 years to rebuild it. He did it in 52 days with the same people that tried to do it prior to that. And he did it because he came with the favor of God and man on his life. But the beauty in that story, I think, is in chapter 3. And it talks about all the people and families that did it together. So you said, after him, next to him, next to them, those are 2-3 terms that they use in that chapter. And in that, there was next generation. Kids were building with their families. Kids were working alongside their families. So they were seeing the importance of not only hard work, but that, hey, we need to do this thing together. So when you ask me, what do I want the next generation to see? I want them to see that in order for us to build in unity together, it's going to take that we do exactly that. We have to do it side by side. And so when I'm building, Dr. Francis is watching my back. And when Dr. Francis is building, young Joe is watching her back. And when young Joe is building, young Isabel is watching his back, and so on and so forth, that we're doing it together, and that there's no other agenda. Like, I'm the one who did this. I'm the one that needs credit. That we would humble ourselves. The next generation would know about humility, because if you know anything about humility, then you will know that you will be catapulted into a place of influence and leadership if you understand how to humble yourself, how to become deep listeners, and how to come alongside one another and build constructively en route to something better for them to inherit and their children to inherit moving forward.
Pastor Greg, what are you most grateful for now in your life?
I'm most grateful for the fact that I have a beautiful wife. I marvel at God's grace, because again, I didn't grow up in a home that promoted being together, being married. And you see that, whether it's on TV or maybe you saw some friends that their parents, you would lean into their marriage. And I always thought when I was younger, like, man, I probably would never have that, because, that was not normal for me to see. And I felt like it was like an unattainable thing. Like, I wouldn't have kids. I wouldn't have a beautiful, beautiful family. I wouldn't be a good dad, because I didn't know what that looked like. Again, I don't know my dad till this day. But I'm not offended or I'm not hurt by it. I feel like if I were to see him physically one day, we would have conversation, and it wouldn't be out of anger. It wouldn't be like, how come you weren't there? It wouldn't be that. It would be like, okay, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life. What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? But I think the thing I'm most grateful for right now is my wife, my family, my son going to college in the fall. He'll be the second person, the second person in our family to go to a university. I was the first. My oldest son will be the second. And so I think back at like, man, I was just happy to go to college, but my son's going to have an opportunity to go to school and get educated. And he's setting the precedent, continually to set the precedence for his younger brothers and his younger sister, and for the rest of our family. I'm proud of the fact that I found the Lord, Jesus Christ, in my life, and he's my savior, and that all my living days are dedicated unto him. And it's not with like a religious stigma on it, but with the heart of God on it, which has allowed me to be in different spaces with different people, with different walks of life, from white, black, Hispanic, from different countries. It's allowed me to travel to different countries, to go in the ghettos of different countries, from the Philippines to Nigeria, Africa, to South Africa, to China, to Spain, Ukraine, Brazil, England, go into these different environments and see culture. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for my mother, who raised me single by herself, and she did what she had to do. I'm thankful that I'm not angry at her and that I have a relationship with her. I'm thankful, lastly, that I also get a chance to speak in to other people's lives, not just people of high influence, but people who are just hungry for truth in their life, and hungry to have conversation, and hunger for growth in their life. And that they would allow me, knowing, the stance that I have and the position I take as a person of faith, that even if they don't believe, that their unbelief doesn't offend me, but it allows me to come in and speak to them and share with them and hear their heart, not there trying to convert them or make them believe what I believe, but to really just show love to them and be like a normal human being. Like, hey, let's just have conversation. And out of that conversation comes probably the greatest thing that I love most in this life, which is relationship. I love relationship. I love relationship with people. I love relationship with humanity. And that's a great starting point. So I'm grateful for those things primarily.
Pastor Greg, talk to a younger Pastor Greg.
Oh, man. Younger Pastor Greg. Okay. Younger Pastor Greg, or younger Greg, I should say, because there was no pastor, and I love, don't get me wrong, the title is very honoring, but it's not something that I'm hung up on. Like, I don't walk around, and I know you're not doing this, but I don't walk around and say, hey man, call me pastor. I don't do that. I let people give me that title, because that's something that God bestows upon you, and that's something that people affirm in you. And so that's how I roll. But if I was to talk to a younger Greg, I would first say, hey, what are your dreams? What do you want to do with your life? And I would hear that person. And, as a young kid, all kids have a big plethora of dreams. It's multifaceted. But then I would help them hone it in. And, hey, what makes your heart leap? And what I mean by that is what makes your heart go? Like when you bring this up, what gives you passion? Oh man, I love podcasts. I love talking to people. That makes my heart leap. Okay. What do you know about that? Well, I know you got to get a microphone. Okay. But what else do you know about that? Well, I know you got to have, and then we start to flesh out their dream. And then I like to help people build their dream based on what they're passionate about. So if I was talking to a younger Greg, I would identify first that starting point. And then I would say, what are your fears? What are you most afraid of? Honestly. And I would allow them to share their fears. And then I would ask them, what are your doubts? And I would allow the person to share their doubts without labeling them or disqualifying them or shaming them. I would say that to them. And then they would tell me that. And then I would break that off of their life, meaning I would speak over them that, no, you're not timid. Do you know that you have this in your life, that God didn't give you a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and sound mind? Well, I don't know if I believe in God. That's okay, because God still believes in you. You're on a journey. Let's walk together. Let me show you what this thing looks like. Oh, okay. And not disqualify them because they don't believe in my God, or he doesn't believe in what I believe. You're not disqualified. If anything, you're open just to walk and be loved and be championed. And so I would start there. And then I would ask, what do you know about family? How do you feel about family? Well, I don't have family. I don't know what family feels like. Okay. Do you know anything about love? What do you know about love? Well, I know if you sleep with a girl, that's love. No, that's not love, young man. You know what I'm saying? And then just start to have those types of conversations and ask them, what is your lens? What is your knowledge of this? Because what that does, again, going back to our original conversation, when you become a deep listener, you become a greater leader. You get to help lead that person and really shepherd them and guide them into their greatness of what God has called them to do. So that's how I would talk to a younger Greg. And to be honest with you, I do that not only with young people, but I do that. You'd be surprised how many successful people I've had the same conversation with at that level, and it's helped them grow as a successful person, as a leader, because what you find is someone that has become so successful, they're so driven on accomplishing a goal or task that they've lost themselves as a human being, and they forgot how to have a normal conversation because it may be all business, it may be agenda driven, but they've lost that characteristic of the thing I probably highly value most in my life, which is relationship. They lost the understanding of having relationship with people. And so I would walk them through that same conversation, and they walk away, 9 times out of 10. Hey, can we stay connected? Hey, can I have your phone number? Hey, and it's not like I'm some profound life coach or some profound pastor. It's not like I have this supernatural ability. It's not that. It's the simple fact that I value relationship, not with the agenda of I want to get something from you, but with the idea of I want to give something to you and I don't want you to give me anything back. I just want to give you life, and I want to give you focus, and I want to give you purpose, and I want to give you relationship. And that's it. And leave it there. And I tell you what, doctor, at the end of the day, when we have those conversations, again, those people, they want to stay connected because that has become a lost art in our society. It's the opposite. Gang, 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 me, get ahead, and destroying relationship with people. But in the kingdom of God, it's the opposite. It's having relationship and valuing relationship. And out of that, everything that you desire in your own life comes to you. It's given to you by not only the Lord, but by people around you, because you understand the thing that's probably of highest value to God, which is relationship, first with him, then with people.
Pastor Greg, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
If I was to conduct this interview, the question I would probably ask myself is, how can we move forward in unity? And how I would answer that is simply listen to one another. Do not label one another. Love one another and listen to one another. I would say if we can start there, we have a great opportunity to do something in our lifetime as humanity to move forward. But we can't disqualify someone or shame that person or condemn them for believing what we don't believe. It doesn't mean that you budge and you shift on what you are anchored in truth in. And what, for me, my faith is my truth. The Lord Christ is truth to me, and the kingdom of God is truth to me. But it does not disqualify me to engage in relationships and people who don't believe what I believe, or to come around people who don't see the way I see. It doesn't disqualify me. If anything, I feel encouraged that, okay, I can sit and have conversation with this person and not be offended, not feel less than, not make them feel less than, not make them feel offended, and really hear their perspective. And so for me, that would be what I would add, the question I would have asked myself, because at the end of the day, my deepest desire is that we would grow in unity with one another, and that we would embrace diversity in one another, and we would stop labeling each other based on what someone else may said or someone else wrote a narrative. Like, educate yourself, but then don't educate yourself to become someone that is an attacker. Educate yourself to be someone that is a unifier. Like, okay, how have I been gifted? What platform have I been given to bring strength and unity to a problem and bring solution to a problem? Now, I'm not saying that everything is, lovey-dovey and there isn't issue and there isn't disagreement. There isn't that. I know that happens in our society, and I know that it is a problem in our society. And there's people who just don't have that agenda. As we say, they want the smoke. You know what I mean? Meaning they want the drama. They want the problems. They want to divide. But if you can sit and talk with those people and not be dragged into that, but still be anchored in what you do, you can actually bring change, or you can at least hear the perspective minimally. And so my deepest desire is that we would have unity out of that, and that the people that need to be at the table know that it's not just the Black community, that it's not just the white community. It's not just the Asian or the Native American community. We all need to be at the table sharing collective intel and perspective en route to make things healthy and strong long term. And if we can grasp that concept, I'm not saying that it would be the answer, but it would be the best starting point en route to the answer, if that makes sense.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called the Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Fun facts, let's do it.
What was your first job?
Paper route.
If you could acquire an instant skill, what would it be?
Reading books really fast.
What food do you eat every week, no matter what?
Protein smoothie.
What is your favorite movie?
Color Purple.
Hit the gym or hit the couch?
Hit the gym. Twice, 3 times.
Pastor Greg, we want to thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast. Why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you if they say, I really would love to get in touch with Pastor Greg? What is the best way for them to reach out? And before you let us go, before we let you go and you say that, share with us because you're writing a book. Tell us about that.
Yeah. The best way you get in contact with me is on Instagram at Hendricks Greg, at Hendricks, HENDRICKS, Greg, GREG. Facebook, you can find me, Greg Hendricks. And then Rock Church East County. I pastor on Instagram at Rock Church East County, Rock Church East County, and on Facebook at Rock Church East County. You can connect with me there. And then also started a clothing line, kingdomcollective.com. That's a clothing line for people that like to wear something that has a great message on it. Also, I started writing a book on fatherlessness, and I'm still working on it right now. I'm target date for it to be out by the end of the year. Yet to settle on a title. I have a couple ideas in mind, but what essentially it deals with is what we talked about in our interview, the impact of fatherlessness in the home and the ramifications it has on the next generation en route to them growing as adults. And I really feel great about this project, and it's speaking out of not only my own life, statistically, what God says about us. Again, I wasn't supposed to. I'm not supposed to be in the position that I'm in, y'all. If you're listening or you're watching, I'm not supposed to be in this position where I'm leading and influencing and helping people, at not only from people who are homeless, but people at the highest level of our world. And I'm not supposed to be doing that statistically. However, God graced me, and got the fatherlessness that I grew up with in my home got replaced by my Heavenly Father. I found identity in Him. And I just been on this journey, and that if He could do it for me, out of all people, He could do it for anybody. Like I'm not super someone special. I'm just submitted to go on this journey and to grow as a human being, as a father, as a husband, and as a parent, and as a human in this society. So it's going to be great. It's on fatherlessness, how to give hope to the next generation. And I'm really excited about it. And so you guys can be looking out for that at the end of this year.
Thank you, Pastor Greg. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.